Hello and welcome to another episode of The Kit Locker with me, Simon Roberts.
And me, Jason Blackiston.
Yeah, that was very natural the way you did that. That was great.
You loved that, didn't you?
Yeah. So here we are again with our kit from the early 80s through to the mid 1990s of the SAS Special Projects or SP Team. And I'd like to start us off on this particular part of the video series with an explanation of why we're doing it in this way. So one of the most important pieces of equipment for the SAS trooper in the SP team is what you might call a load-bearing vest.
Yeah, I think it was the most recognisable as well. It kind of was their stamp, wasn't it?
A staple of the equipping for quite a long period.
That was the word I was looking for.
That's right. So from 1980 to roughly about the mid-90s, 1996, 97, this, what we collectors effectively call a Mk2 vest, which is a suede vest, which is also called an assault waistcoat or an ops waistcoat, and which, as you see, hosts a variety of different items of equipment. This was following on from the type of assault vest that was worn at the Iranian embassy siege. Tune into our video on that later. Which was superseded by this piece of equipment here. One of the primary requirements for an assault vest, given the experience of the Iranian embassy siege, where the building did literally end up on fire, was for it to be fireproof or flame-proof.
Fire resistant.
What does that mean? Talk about that, because I use that term without really thinking about it.
Fireproof, it means it can't be destroyed by fire.
That's not really possible, is it?
Like, for instance,
with a
steel or certain types of stone.
Yeah.
You expose it to fire, it's still the same as it was before, a bit warmer.
Yeah.
Fire resistant says it has a certain resistance to flame and heat. So it can be destroyed by fire, as in everything will eventually be destroyed by fire.
Yeah.
So they went with this, the suede, because it is a very...
Inherently
fire resistant, not fireproof.
Fire resistant. This was interestingly developed by a very well-known member of the SAS who we both knew, called Mel Parry, who was one of the SP team, famously seen in the footage of the front balcony of the Iranian embassy, stepping over the balcony with his colleague John McAleese to plant a frame charge against the window, which we saw on the footage. And one of Mel's functions was running, or in collaboration with other colleagues, what's called the Ops Research Wing, which was developing new equipment.
Yeah.
The assault vest worn at the Iranian embassy, what we call the Mark I, I suppose, is of a different construction and material
very
set.
different, isn't it?
Very, very different and unexpected to what we thought it would be. But
we'll cover that.
Oh yeah,
we'll cover that in detail, and I think there'll be a few surprises there.
There will be probably a few surprises, and who knows, maybe disappointments, maybe something, maybe something else,
maybe disappointment. But Mel was very active in the development of this because of the lessons learned at the Iranian embassy. So the kit wasn't up to spec, so they almost went all out to completely make a fireproof kit head to toe.
Yes,
and this was A, load carrying, B, a cover for the quite delicate bulletproof or
bullet resistant
vest.
Well, the body armor,
to try and protect that from a certain amount of heat.
Yes.
It's obviously made of this suede, which they call pigskin.
So it may be a pig leather of some kind
with a Nomex liner.
Yeah, or polycotton possibly. I don't know. What do you think?
It sort of feels a bit. Yeah. It feels a bit like Nomex. It has that sort of man-made fibre.
That's the thing, because as a manufacturer, you've used a lot of material like Nomex polycotton, and you can probably tell the difference a bit more. Better than I can.
I would say that feels like Nomex. It would kind of defeat the object of spending good money on making the shell of the vest from suede to provide that level of fire protection. And then skimping on the inside, because any heat transfer would melt any polycotton that you have underneath that.
Yes, that's a good point, because that lesson had been learned in Northern Ireland with soldiers being exposed to things like Molotov cocktails and other kinds of sort of fire bombs where uniforms had got burnt and stuck to the flesh, which is not a good thing.
Which is what happened in the Iranian embassy siege. I mean, those polycotton coveralls that they had were just melted. Yeah.
So this was devised specifically with the idea of being fire resistant by, as I understand, the Ops Research Wing going to speak to the fire brigade, people who know most of all about these things, and saying, what do you think is the best material? Yeah. And they said leather.
Yeah, well, they went down to the fire training college at Morton on the Marsh, and Mel was telling us a great story about how they were testing these things. Is they have basically a giant gas fire there, and they were standing almost against the gas fire to see how much heat transfer, what melted, and they got it to a point where they could stand really close to the flame source, and not get transfer burn.
So this particular item, as I understand it, I bought this back 25 years ago from Paul Evers, who is a name who will come up again with relation to leather personal equipment, belt kits, holsters, things like that. And in particular, this the Mk2 suede vest.
He was one of the small cottage industries that we were talking about in one of our previous videos.
That's absolutely right.
Sitting in a room making specialist equipment.
So you can see it is essentially, as Jason says, it's a liner with the suede stitched to the outside. It is also adjustable in size by like a gilet type of lacing at the sides. I mean, it is a gilet of sorts that can be adjusted by the operator, because it obviously does need to expand and sit comfortably over the body armour, which is quite bulky, to be honest. And it has these various sleeves here, one for a fireman's axe, a typical piece of entry equipment used for breaking windows or whatever.
Yeah, method of entry.
Whatever you need. Secured by these bits of cotton ribbon, I think you'd say what they were called.
Yeah, I don't know whether they would have any...
Like a thin webbing.
Yeah, a webbing of whether they have any fire-resistant qualities or whether that's an Omex webbing, I don't know, to tell you the truth.
Lift the dot fasteners.
We have to set it on fire.
Well, we're not going to do that because it's the only one I've got.
Actually.
Well, it's not the only one I've got, but then there you go.
Yeah.
That the dot fastener secures that.
They're like a blackened brass, aren't they?
Yeah, it's sort of unusual. You don't really see them outside of military equipment. I don't know if they're ever been used in civilian sort of applications, but I only ever see them on British military equipment.
I see them on similar things on car hoods.
Right, yes, that's right, yes.
Like tonneau covers and things like that.
On motorcycle sidecars.
I remember having an old Triumph Spitfire with similar things.
So if we just sort of make a start really, then we'll take out this fireman's axe. This sits in a padded sleeve at the front of the vest. And as you can see, this is a fireman's axe marked with the crow's foot, which I think is the...
yeah, 1952.
Yeah. So...
it's as old as you.
Thanks so much. Manufactured by Elwell, this one. Other manufacturers will have been available because I think, as with lots of the equipment we cover, the UK MOD or whatever department would specify a pattern for something, and it could be made by. I mean, there's a manufacturer called Shand who make fire axes as well. And you're
I like this
holding
axe.
that in a slightly threatening way.
I quite like this.
That's
axe.
fine.
I think I'm going to keep this.
Moving swiftly on. One of the other features of this particular vest, and not the vests that were used at the Iranian embassy, is what is called an RAF aircrew knife. My lovely colleague here demonstrates how it's removed from its sheath, which is essentially a steel slip sheath that secures the knife by a spring.
Butterfly,
a spring butterfly. Well, that tightens on a metal nipple there and keeps the knife in place. And that was really principally for being able to cut anything.
Cut yourself away from abseil ropes.
Tangled ropes.
Was one of the
as happened.
I think that was one of the lessons they learned. They needed a knife to cut yourself out of tangles, etc.
You might need to cut somebody who has been tied up. if you were trying to free them, I
that's
suppose.
true. That's true.
You might need to cut other things, but for whatever reason, it was thought best to place it here on just over the kind of the right collarbone.
Yeah, I mean, they were used by the RAF to cut through webbing straps.
On pilots.
If you end up upside down in the aeroplane, you get out your webbing straps.
At the Iranian embassy, these patches you will see were attached actually usually to cover all arms, very basically stitched on. They weren't used on the vests themselves at the Iranian embassy, which is a popular misconception.
Yeah, there's a lot of people say, oh, they were on the on the shoulder, but it came later.
So further to that, you have here a PTT, a press to talk or a pressel button, which is connected to, it's a junction box effectively connecting to the throat mic worn by the trooper and the integrated earpiece, which comes along with that, and ties him into the comms net via a Storno radio, which sits here conveniently in a pocket at the side of the vest. Now, I don't know a lot about radios. I don't know really, much about VHF and UHF. Maybe you know something.
No, I mean, radios are not my frequency.
No, I see what you did there.
But I'm sure someone in the comments will be able to tell us all about the radio.
I do know a little bit about the radios that come up a bit later, the sort of VHF. I mean, as I understand, VHF is for transmitting over shorter distances, UHF for longer distances.
It's got a NATO stock number here.
Yeah. These were a very popular radio system in use in the sort of early 80s, also used by the police. You will have seen police officers at the time. They also used the Storno radio, perhaps slightly different format, slightly different battery. The SAS ones have quite long battery here. The PTT plugs in there. There's your aerial. Very straightforward.
These weren't encrypted, were they?
I don't think so. But from people who used them at the time, who I knew who were in the military, they said they weren't particularly good.
Okay.
So I don't know. But they're definitely not really used anymore.
Forget your radio is made by the cheapest bidder.
Could be the case. Over here, you've got, which is a more standard, what you call a fist mic, which you often commonly see on policemen pictured at this time. These were also in use with the SP team. You can see in some pictures, a sniper may just be using this. He doesn't need an elaborate throat mic setup or something like that.
I mean, I'm surprised how well that fits in there.
It's purpose made, and as we go on, we'll see that because the radio requirement changes over time, there's an adaptation that comes along to accommodate a different size of radio. The other obvious thing we have is the front left pouches, which host the flashbangs. Stun grenades.
Stun grenades, yes. Dual CS gas and flash.
Yeah, I know these as L13 grenades, L13A1 or L13A2. There's this whole sort of arcane world of British Army designations. There's the L1A1 SLR rifle, and there's the L this and the L that. And some of the L numbers are confusingly the same for different types of item. But these appear to have been developed based on requirement from Porton Down as a combined magnesium fulminate flash charge grenade to create a very blinding flash and a series of loud bangs. And in these particular grenades, I understand they were combined with CS or CR gas.
I should imagine these are single bang.
Well, I'm not sure they are. I've seen a cutaway version of these grenades, and it appears there's a sort of bunch of grapes arrangement. Okay. So you have a string of sort of little ball charges, which go off in succession.
I've seen a similar one to this. I've been in a room where, in a training scenario, where one similar to this, probably a later version, was thrown, and it was a more sort of bulbous body, and that did have multiple flashes in it.
Yeah. That's right. Okay. These ones that we've got here, these were actually replicas made for the 6 Days film. Okay. These are solid resin. The actual grenades themselves were essentially rubber canisters with a tin top, a metal a spoon, the fuse lever.
Did the charge burst out the bottom then?
No,
did the whole thing split open?
It seemed that they tore at the side. If you go to the Imperial War Museum, there's a small display of kit, and it just tears a chunk out of the side as the maroons pop out,
burst
and,
out,
bang around, go bang
so
around.
there'd
the
be a
ring.
certain amount of gas
Yeah,
blown into the air,
and hence
irritant.
hence the use of respirators at the Iranian embassy for that reason. So if we pull apart the vest a little bit more, what we've got here is we've got various loops for attaching the PTT to the front of the vest, and what we can do.
Something I have noted about pulling those out there, they don't seem to fit as well as the radio. The radio fits very well. These are a little bit. You can imagine if you're leaping around, I should imagine you could lose one of them very easily.
Yeah, there is something odd about that, isn't there?
Yeah,
that kind of loose fit. I don't know.
they're very loose.
It's sort of strange. We'll also just take the radio out here, and we'll move the comms gear, so we can also just flip the vest over and have a look at the back. Again, it's a very similar layout to the vest used at the Iranian embassy, but not quite the same. You have a kidney pouch, though, at the back, which is going to host various bits of first aid equipment, first field dressings, things like that. Similar purpose as was used at the Iranian embassy. I am also told sometimes these may house oxygen bottles, short-term air supply bottles.
Yes. I remember Mel talking about they put it wouldn't be oxygen.
Oh, right, okay.
It's highly inflammable. Oh, yes. Makes things very, very flammable. It would just be air. And Mel said they connected to their respirators, and they could just hit the button at the side and it would positively pressure the respirator.
Right.
Because obviously you can stand in, you can have as much fire-resistant kit as you want, but the fact is the air still going into your lungs is very hot.
This is something John McAleese talked about. If you're breathing in burning stuff, he said, it's not good for you.
It can burn your lungs, even though you don't burn on the outside. The hot air can burn your lungs.
Nice and crisp.
Smoke inhalation can cause a lot of problems. What's this?
I really don't know what that is, actually. That's some sort of first aid thing. This is one of the other problems as well, because I'm not particularly...
It's a chest seal, is it?
Particularly well informed. It could be a chest seal.
I don't know. I'm not a very medical man.
It's some sort of thing that came with some equipment that I got, and I thought that would look good in that pouch, but I don't know how much use it would be to anyone operating
Well, especially as we don't actually know what it is.
Not really, no.
So, mention in the comments. Tell us what it is.
If you
tell
know,
us how you use it.
Do tell us. I mean, we are...
That'd be good.
If you know better than us, tell us. We are interested in information.
These are colder than you, son.
Well, these are these are not quite as old as the ones that were in use at the Iranian embassy. Often those were sort of almost World War II vintage by the looks of them. But these are a sort of fairly standard kind of salmon pink first field dressing that you see used throughout the British Army in that period. And they sit nice and snugly in there. Now, that's the suede vest. This one, you might not be able to see on this, but it did come with, little marks on here. I don't know if it had been used like with something like simunition or something like that. Sometimes bits of equipment come with little bits of coloration from, practice ammunition.
You're talking a natural product. You're going to get flaws in it. But did this come with any label in it at all? Is there any sort of label in this?
No, there was nothing at all. I literally just rang Paul Levers. He unfortunately died shortly after in the early 2000s. But I asked to sort of obtain the pattern of suede vest that I learned was used. And he very kindly made one up for me and sent it to me. It wasn't free. I did have to pay.
Oh dear.
But it was very, obliging of him to do so.
I bet that hurt your wallet.
Well, I'm not particularly generous with money, so that was probably the case. There you go. That is the suede vest from which others were derived and different patterns were created for not just the SAS, but the SBS, other kinds of forces, police forces. And we'll see the changes in that as we go on with our series of videos in later parts of the story. But for now, I think that's pretty much all we're going to say about the suede vest.
Move on to the next.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
We'll see you again on the Kit Locker next time.
Bye-bye.